I'm not here for small talk. I want you to fix it. The words came from a stranger standing in Nena's doorway, rain dripping from his lashes, his shirt torn open, and the kind of presence that made the air feel warmer. She should have asked what he meant. She should have told him she couldn't help him. But she hadn't spoken in 2 years. Nena only stared back, heart thudding in a way it hadn't in months. The rain pounded against the shop roof, the smell of wet earth curling into the air between them. Slowly, she reached for her notepad, her fingers brushing the fabric of the shirt he'd dropped on her table. The rip in it was clean, deliberate, as if someone had tried to peel it off him in a hurry. "You sew here?" he asked, voice deep and edged with something playful. She wrote, "What do you need mended?" He leaned closer, his shadow swallowing the glow from her little desk lamp. "The shirt, maybe more." It was the way he said it, low, almost teasing, that made her look up into eyes that could strip secrets bare. She didn't yet know his name was Odigun, didn't know his songs filled dance floors across Nigeria. But she could already tell. This man was trouble. And for the first time in a long time, trouble didn't feel like something to run from. Her hands trembled slightly as she threaded the needle. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the way he was watching her. "I've never seen someone fix a shirt like they're performing surgery," Odigun said, leaning against the counter, his hoodie unzipped and dripping on the floor. "You're precise, careful, slow." Nena didn't look up. She couldn't. If she did, she might get lost in those eyes, and she didn't have the strength for that kind of danger. She focused on the stitch. Neat, perfect, quiet, the same way she'd learned to live. Then she felt it. His hand brushing hers as he pushed the fabric closer. Not accidental. Deliberate. She stiffened. "Relax," he murmured. "I'm just helping." She met his gaze then, just for a second, and something shifted. It wasn't his beauty, though he had plenty of it. It was the way he looked at her, as if her silence was an invitation, not a wall. The rain outside softened to a steady drizzle, the sound wrapping around them like a song only they could hear. She stitched the final seam, her pulse betraying her calm, and slid the shirt toward him. His fingers lingered over hers as he took it. "How much do I owe you?" She scribbled on her pad. "Nothing." Odigun's smile was slow, dangerous. "Then I'll have to come back." And somehow she knew he would. 2 days passed. Nena told herself she wouldn't think about him. She buried herself in work, hemming skirts, patching old jeans, fixing stubborn zippers. But every time the shop bell rang, her heart betrayed her, leaping with a foolish hope that it might be him. It was late afternoon when the rain returned, softer this time, like a secret. She was bent over her sewing machine, the low hum filling the small shop, when the bell chimed again. She looked up, and there he was. Odigun stood in the doorway, not in a hoodie this time, but in a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the kind of effortless style that made him look like he didn't care yet knew exactly what effect he had. In his hand, he carried something wrapped in brown paper. "I brought you something," he said, stepping inside. She gestured to the table, and he placed the package there. When she unwrapped it, her fingers stilled. A brand new set of premium sewing needles, polished silver glinting in the light. "You didn't have to," she wrote quickly. "I wanted to," he said simply. Then with a smirk, "Besides, I owed you." She shook her head, but there was a softness in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Odigun didn't sit this time. He moved slowly around the shop, touching the spools of thread, the neatly stacked fabrics, his gaze lingering on the little personal touches. A framed photo of her late father, a clay vase of fresh hibiscus flowers by the window. "You keep it quiet in here," he said, almost to himself. "It feels safe." The words caught her off guard. She wasn't used to anyone noticing the way her silence wrapped around the room like a blanket. When he finally turned back to her, his voice was lower. "Do you ever miss it? Speaking?" She froze, the question feeling heavier than it sounded. Her eyes flickered to the rain outside, then back to him. She picked up her pen and wrote, "Sometimes." But words, They can hurt more than silence. Odigun stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar under his jaw, the tiny flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "And what about touch?" he asked softly. "Does that hurt too?" She didn't answer, not with words, not even with writing. But the way her breath caught, the way she didn't step back, told him enough. He smiled, slow, knowing, and took a step back as if letting her keep her walls. "I'll see you again, Nena." And before she could even process how he knew her name, he was gone, leaving the smell of rain and something far more dangerous lingering in the air. It was past closing when the knock came. 3 slow raps against the wooden door, like someone asking permission to step into her life. Nena hesitated, thinking it might be a late customer. But when she opened it, the street lamps caught his face. Odigun. His shirt clung to him, wet from the drizzle, hair damp, eyes darker than she'd ever seen. "I needed somewhere quiet," he said, stepping inside before she could answer. "Somewhere I wouldn't have to be." "Odigun." She locked the door, unsure why, and watched him pace the small shop like a restless tide. His hands were in his pockets, but his gaze kept coming back to her. Not the sewing machine, not the thread, but her. "Do you know what it's like," he began, voice low, "to be wanted for everything but who you are?" Her throat tightened. She didn't write anything. Instead, she reached for the kettle on the back shelf and poured him tea, the steam curling between them. He took the cup, his fingers brushing hers, warm, steady, and didn't move away. The silence stretched, thick and alive. Then he stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of him despite the rain still clinging to his skin. His hand lifted, slow, deliberate, and cupped her jaw. She didn't flinch, didn't pull back. Her heart was pounding so loudly she thought he might hear it. "You don't speak," he murmured, his thumb brushing her cheek. "But somehow, you're the loudest thing in my head." She exhaled sharply, and before she could think, her hand rose to his chest, palm flat against the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was the first time she'd touched him, and it felt like pressing against something she'd been afraid to want. Odigun's breath hitched. His other hand came to rest lightly on her waist, not pulling, not demanding, just there, waiting. She looked up at him, the question in her eyes, and for a moment, they were suspended in something neither of them had planned for. Then, just as quickly, he stepped back. "I should go," he said, voice rough. He left without finishing the tea. But when she lay in bed that night, her cheeks still burned where his hand had been. The rain was heavy again, a drumming that made the old roof groan. Nena was closing early when she heard the bell, and there he was. No pretense this time, no torn shirt or package in hand. Just him, looking at her like he'd run out of excuses not to be there. "I didn't want to be alone tonight," Odigun said, his voice quieter than the rain. She didn't ask why. She only stepped aside to let him in. He moved slowly through the shop, touching nothing, saying nothing, until he stopped in front of her sewing table and leaned against it. "I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me the other night," he said. Her fingers stilled on the fabric she'd been folding. "You think it was nothing," he continued. "But for me, it felt like someone finally saw me. Not the music, not the name. Just me." She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking to his. Odigun stepped closer, his body blocking out the small pool of lamplight. "Tell me to go, Nena," he murmured. "Write it down. I'll leave." She didn't move. His hand rose, brushing a damp curl from her forehead, his thumb trailing down her cheek. "You're not telling me to go," he said, almost to himself. Then, without warning, he bent and pressed his lips to hers. It wasn't a cautious kiss. It was slow, deep, and warm, like he was trying to taste every piece of silence she'd wrapped herself in. She didn't push him away. Her hands found his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric, holding him there. When they broke apart, their foreheads stayed pressed together, breath mingling. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. But when the lights flickered and the rain roared harder, she reached for his hand, and led him toward the small couch in the corner of the shop. That night he didn't go home. And neither of them pretended it was just about the rain. The morning after the storm, the air smelled of wet earth and hibiscus. Nena woke before dawn, still curled against the couch, her head on Adigun's shoulder. His arm was around her waist, heavy and protective, as if letting go would be unthinkable. For a moment, she let herself just watch him. The relaxed line of his jaw, the faint rise and fall of his chest, the peace on his face that didn't match the man she'd met in the doorway days ago. When his eyes opened, the peace cracked, replaced with that same heat that had lingered in their kiss. "Morning," he murmured, voice still rough from sleep. His fingers traced lazy circles at her hip. "You're even more dangerous when you're quiet." She smirked faintly, the closest thing to a smile she'd given him, and reached for her notepad. "And you're worse when you talk." He chuckled, leaning down until their noses brushed. "Then maybe I should stop talking." The kiss came before she could write anything back. Slow at first, then deeper, hungrier. She didn't resist when his hand slid into her hair, when her fingers gripped the back of his neck. The world outside faded, and the only rhythm was the pounding of their hearts. When they finally broke apart, breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "You know I can't just stay away now, right?" She didn't write an answer. She didn't need to. But as he left later that morning, brushing his lips against her temple before stepping into the sun, Nena caught sight of something in the street. Two men leaning against a black SUV, watching him. She froze. She'd seen one of them before, in a grainy newspaper photo, standing beside Adigun during a scandal that had nearly ended his career. And for the first time since meeting him, her chest felt heavy not from desire, but from the whisper of danger. The men outside were gone by the time she stepped out, but their faces clung to her thoughts like wet clothes. Nena spent the day pretending to work, adjusting seams, sorting fabrics, but her mind kept replaying the way Adigun had looked when he left that morning, the way he hadn't noticed them watching. By late afternoon, the sky was dark again, the promise of rain thick in the air. She was locking up when the bell jingled, and he walked in, smiling like nothing in the world could touch him. "Did you miss me?" he asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her notepad and wrote, "Who were they?" The smile faltered just for a second. "Who?" "The men by the SUV this morning." His jaw tightened, but he looked away, brushing it off. "Friends. Not important." She wanted to believe him, but his eyes told a different story. Something heavy, guarded. And yet, when he stepped toward her, the air between them shifted again, filling with that same pull she'd been powerless against since the day he walked in. "You worry too much," he said softly, cupping her cheek. "You should be thinking about me, not them." Her pen hovered over the paper, but the warmth of his palm against her skin made the words slip from her mind. When he leaned down, she let him kiss her. Deep, slow, like he was trying to erase her doubts one breath at a time. He didn't stop there. His lips trailed to her jaw, her neck, the curve of her shoulder, each touch deliberate, coaxing. Her fingers tangled in his shirt, pulling him closer until their bodies were pressed together, the sound of rain starting to drum against the roof. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her skin. He didn't. The couch was too far, so they stayed there by the sewing table, the scent of fabric and rain mixing with the heat between them. His hands explored slowly, respectfully, but with a hunger that made her feel both cherished and undone. When he finally rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard, he murmured, "You're the only quiet I've ever wanted to live in." She almost smiled. Almost, but then she saw it again through the window. The black SUV, parked at the far end of the street, lights off, engine idling. And this time, she was sure one of the men was looking straight at her. The rain poured so hard that night it blurred the world beyond her shop window, but Nena could still see it. The black SUV parked like a shadow that refused to leave. Adigun was inside, leaning back on the couch, hair damp from the dash across the street, shirt clinging to him. His eyes found hers immediately, reading the worry she couldn't put into words. "They're not here for you," he said quietly. "Then who?" She scribbled. He hesitated, rubbing a hand across his jaw. "Me. Always me." She waited. Silence stretched between them until it felt like a wall, one she couldn't climb without him letting her. Finally he sat forward, elbows on his knees. 2 years ago before all this I played a private show. Things got out of hand. Some people got hurt. And someone took the fall. Someone who shouldn't have. Her pen froze. I thought it was over, he continued, voice low. I thought I paid them off, kept their names out of the press. But the people watching me now, they want something else. They want to make sure I remember. Who took the fall? He wrote. His gaze met hers, dark and steady. A girl. She was in the wrong place, wrong time. And because of me, she lost everything. Her fingers trembled as she set the pen down. Slowly she walked toward him, each step heavier than the last. When she stood before him, he searched her face like a man bracing for a storm. She picked up the notepad again, but this time her writing was jagged. That girl was me. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Adigun's eyes widened, his lips parting. Nena, I didn't just lose my home. I lost my voice. That night someone hit me. I never spoke again. He was on his feet now, hands gripping her arms. I didn't know. God, I swear, if I had known. She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. I didn't want your apology. I wanted my life back. The tension between them was a taut wire, one pull from snapping, but then his hands softened, sliding down her arms until his fingers laced with hers. I can't give you back the past, he whispered, but I can give you everything from this moment on. It was wrong. It was dangerous. It was a love born from the ashes of something broken. But when his lips found hers again, the kiss wasn't about erasing the past. It was about claiming the future, no matter how many shadows watched from the street. Outside, the SUV pulled away, its taillights swallowed by the rain. Inside, their bodies pressed closer, hearts beating in unison, as if daring the world to take anything else from them. Weeks passed. The black SUV never returned, but Nena knew shadows didn't disappear. They just learned to wait. The shop felt different now. Warmer. Sometimes Adigun would sit by the window, guitar in hand, playing melodies she couldn't sing but could feel in every corner of her chest. He never asked her to speak, never pushed. But when he played, it was like he was giving her a voice without a sound. One quiet evening, as the sky bruised into night, he looked up from his guitar and caught her watching him. You're the only song I'll never get tired of writing, he said. She picked up her notepad, the corner of her mouth lifting. And you're the only trouble I'll let through my door. He grinned, setting the guitar aside, and crossed the small space between them. His kiss was gentle this time, a promise, not a demand. Outside, the rain began again, soft and steady. She closed her eyes and let the sound wrap around them, thinking how strange it was that the same rain that once felt like loneliness now sounded like love. Neither of them saw the shadow in the far corner of the street, leaning against a lamppost, watching quietly before melting back into the darkness.